For decades now, Australians have absolutely loved Japanese cars. Toyota's marketing campaign, "Oh, what a feeling," and everyone jumps up in the air with joy that they now own a Toyota, it worked incredibly well. However, it's starting to wear off. The Japanese magic, it's not looking so magical this year, that's for sure. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. It's great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. My name's Sam Evans. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Great to have you all. Welcome back, everyone else. The market share of cars sourced from Japan is on track to be the lowest in decades this year. That's driven by Toyota's so-called supply shortages and correlating with rapid growth in imports from China. A lot of these new imports from China are EVs, BYD, Tesla, MG EVs, and of course there's other affordable cars such as pickup trucks as well that are coming from China now. And people are starting to say, you know what, Toyota, you have no EVs. Mazda, the only EV you have is terrible. It is terrible. That's just the facts. Basically, there's really no EVs coming out of Japan other than the Nissan Leaf. And that thing's, well, it's old and it's expensive, so no one's buying it. In the last 20 years, the average yearly market share of Japanese-made cars in Australia has been around 33%. But the lowest figure in record was 27.6% in 2016. The greatest was 38.3% in 2005. In 2023 though, Japanese cars have accounted for around 27% of all sales in Australia, with 124,535 units out of a market-wide 456,833. Basically, 1 in every 4 cars sold right now in Australia is Japanese. But those figures are dropping fast, very fast. In fact, Honda has gone from being one of the biggest automakers in Australia and in many countries around the world to being one of the smallest. It's not even in the top 10 manufacturers in Australia. And the same thing is happening to other Japanese automakers in not only Australia, but many other places around the world. Now, yes, you're probably thinking, well, they're still selling pretty well, and they are. But clearly this disruption is happening and happening fast. What this means is that while Japan is still Australia's biggest source of vehicle imports ahead of Thailand, the market share figure is at its lowest for 20 years. And it could actually be more than that. In fact, a lot more than that. We just don't have information pre-2004. To give you some idea on how this is actually happening or what is happening, Australians took delivery of 22,000 Japanese-made cars in the first 5 months of 2022. 22,000 more than they did this year in the first quarter of this year. 22,000 more. That's an enormous difference. I mean, if you look at the numbers, Japanese-made cars have been declining in popularity in Australia every single year now for the last 3 years. 2020, 34%. 2021, 33.4%. 2022, 30.5%. And this year, 27%. Now, like I said, this is just giving you an idea of what the trend is. This trend will continue. It's going to speed up, if anything, because, like I said, Japan has no compelling EVs for sale, and they don't plan on making any that I'm aware of and selling them in Australia at prices that people can actually afford. Or that people can say, you know what, that's a good enough car for their money. I think I'll justify buying that car, for example. So what's happening? Well, the same thing is happening in China. Our market, in fact, in some ways is following the Chinese market. Sales of Japanese cars made this year and sold in Australia have coincided with the fact that China has surpassed Japan worldwide. So Japan for many, many years has been the automaker that has exported more cars than anyone else in the world. In fact, it's held this title now for decades. Not anymore. This year, China surpassed Japan for the first time in history to be the biggest exporter of cars worldwide. And that trend, it's only increasing. I mean, China is just growing at this rapid pace whilst Japan is declining. And that decline will just get faster and faster because we're just seeing the precipice here. This is just like the tip of the S-curve. It's just that point in time where we're about to see an enormous explosion. And the reason being 57% of all EVs sold worldwide are sold in China, meaning there's a lot of compelling electric cars there. They're very affordable. In fact, they're cheaper than many gasoline-powered cars that we buy now in Australia. It's only a matter of time before many of those are on sale in Australia at prices that people just go, well, I can't say no to that. For example, MG4, about to arrive here in Australia. That's going to be an incredible seller. The BYD Dolphin, same thing. And then eventually you'll have the Tesla Model 2, which will be made in China as well. A Tesla Model 2 for, say, 50,000 Australian dollars, that will sell like hotcakes. A smaller electric crossover branded Tesla, if not hundreds of thousands of buyers lining up for one of those. So this year, sales of Chinese-made cars have grown by 80% versus last year. 80% in Australia. That's an insane increase. A lot of Australians say, I'll never buy a Chinese car, never buy a Chinese EV, never buy a Chinese vehicle, and then they do. I mean, many of them don't even know, for example, that MG is actually owned by the Chinese government, basically. SAIC is the parent company of MG. So now Chinese cars represent 16% of the market. Japanese, 27%. You can clearly see where one of them's going up 80%, where the other one's going down. And while the future of Japanese automobiles in Australia is pretty evident where it's going. Do you buy any mobile phones made in Japan? Just curious. Does anyone do that? I don't think so. So what are these Chinese cars being sold in Australia? Well, number one, MG. They're 7th overall in the sales charts in Australia. Tesla is 8th. Great Wall Motors is 13th, and LDV is 16th. LDV, they sell EVs. MG, they sell a lot of EVs. Tesla, they sell EVs. Great Wall Motors, they're about to sell a lot of EVs with the new Aura brand, which will go on sale within the next month or two. So I'm sure you're not shocked to realize that over the past few months, the car brands in Australia that have declined in sales the most have been the Japanese ones. In particular, Toyota, and of course, Honda. And interestingly, when you look at surveys, buyer surveys in the US of the buyers who are buying more Teslas than anyone else, what their previous car was, most of the time, it was a Toyota or a Honda. Strange, eh? Now, if you don't believe me, you think, oh, I'm just making up a video to try and get you interested. Well, here's the numbers. So far this year, Toyota sales down 28%. Mitsubishi down 28.5%. Mazda down 7%. Suzuki down 18%. Honda down 14%. And those numbers for Honda in particular were on an abysmal year last year. So that down 14% was on like a down 70% previously. Similar things are going on in China, of course. Honda sales down, Mitsubishi sales down. In fact, look at, say, Nissan sales. They're down 40%. Honda's down about 40%. Mazda's down about 65% in China this year. So they're getting belted in China and they're suffering a bit in Australia as well. And unfortunately, this is just a trend I believe we can expect to continue. So far this year, Japanese-made cars are down in Australia by 15%. Thai-made cars, as in cars made in Thailand, are down 5.6%. China-made cars are up 80%. Korea are up 3.3%. Germany are up 32%, and the overall market has grown by 4.3%. Now, if you're watching this thinking, oh, it's just a matter of time before the Japanese automakers are going to flood the Australian car market with EVs, you're going to have to tell me. I'm curious to know, which EV will Honda bring to Australia? What about Toyota, the BZ4X? A lot of people are going to buy those. I mean, Toyota Australia already said when it finally comes here, it's going to be expensive. In fact, they've said that on 17 different occasions. It's going to be expensive. 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 They keep on saying that in their PR releases, their media releases. They continue to say it's going to be expensive. They're not going to bring many of them here. And if people want them, I'd be very surprised considering they can get better vehicles at probably lower prices. So that leaves companies like Nissan with the Leaf, which will be killed off soon. And hopefully Nissan bring the Ariya. Now that is actually a good car, but here the challenge lies in production. There's been numerous articles over the last few months saying that Nissan is struggling mightily with producing significant numbers of the Ariya. So yeah, I don't hold up too much hope for Australians getting that either. Now, if you disagree or if you agree, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.